The glittering lights of Manhattan sprawled beneath Victoria's penthouse, a sea of diamonds shimmering against the deep velvet of the night sky. For months, she had meticulously planned every detail of this evening, her birthday party, an event that promised to be the talk of the city. The guest list read like a who's who of New York's elite, the decor a testament to her flawless taste, and the menu curated by one of the finest chefs in the country. But tonight wasn't just about flaunting her wealth and status. Tonight, Victoria had something more sinister in mind. This party would serve as the perfect backdrop for her latest amusement, a cruel game disguised as a gesture of generosity. In a small, dimly lit Brooklyn apartment, Maria stood in front of a cracked mirror, adjusting the simple dress she had bought with the last of her savings. The garment was modest, nothing like the designer pieces that would be on display at the penthouse tonight, but it was the best she could afford. Behind her, her son Daniel watched with wide eyes, his small face lit up with excitement. "Mama, are you sure we're supposed to go? It sounds so fancy," he said, his voice tinged with both awe and nervousness. Maria forced a smile, her heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. "Yes, sweetheart, we've been invited, and we'll go, but remember, we must be polite and stay close to each other, okay?" She tried to sound confident, even as a gnawing sense of dread twisted in her stomach. The invitation had come as a surprise, a handwritten note from Victoria herself, inviting Maria and Daniel to the party. Victoria had framed it as a gesture of kindness, a way to include the people who worked so hard behind the scenes to make her life perfect. But Maria sensed something off in the way Victoria's smile never quite reached her eyes when she delivered the invite. Despite her reservations, she had accepted. Daniel deserved to experience something magical, and she hoped that perhaps, even amidst the grandeur, they could find a few moments of joy. Little did she know, she was walking into a meticulously laid trap. The elevator ride up to Victoria's penthouse felt like an eternity. Maria held Daniel's hand tightly, her palms sweaty despite her calm exterior, as the doors slid open. They stepped into a world that seemed plucked from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a warm, golden glow over the elegantly dressed guests who mingled, glasses of champagne in hand. The opulence was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the simplicity of their lives. Daniel's eyes were wide as saucers, his hand squeezing Maria's for reassurance. "Mama, look at all the lights," he whispered, his voice a mix of awe and nervousness. Victoria was waiting, poised at the entrance like a queen receiving her subjects. Dressed in a gown that shimmered like liquid gold, she exuded confidence and control. As Maria and Daniel approached, she plastered on her most radiant smile. "Maria, Daniel, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us," she cooed, her voice dripping with insincerity. Her eyes flicked over Maria's dress, lingering just a beat too long before she turned her attention to Daniel. "And you must be Daniel. My, you look so handsome tonight." She crouched down, meeting his gaze with a saccharine smile that made Maria's skin crawl. "Are you excited to be here?" Daniel nodded shyly, his grip on Maria's hand tightening. "Yes, ma'am," he murmured, glancing around the room. Victoria straightened, her gaze shifting back to Maria, a flicker of amusement dancing in her eyes. "I hope you both enjoy yourselves, there's so much to see and do tonight." With a final, dismissive smile, she drifted away, her attention already shifting to the next group of guests. Maria watched her go, a knot tightening in her chest. She could feel the eyes of the other guests on them, whispers buzzing in the air like invisible bees, but she held her head high, determined not to let them see her discomfort. As the evening progressed, Maria and Daniel moved through the crowd, trying to stay on the outskirts. It was clear they were out of place. Maria in her modest dress, Daniel clinging to her side, his wide eyes darting around the room. The other guests were draped in luxury, their conversations filled with mentions of high-stakes investments, exclusive holidays, and social circles Maria could barely comprehend. She tried to focus on Daniel, pointing out the ice sculptures, the grand piano, the stunning view of the city skyline, anything to distract him from the curious stares and occasional snide comments that floated their way. Victoria, holding court in the center of the room, called out for everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special surprise for you all," she announced, her voice ringing clear and confident. "Our very own Maria and her son Daniel have joined us tonight, and I thought it would be wonderful if they could be part of the evening's festivities. Maria, Daniel, would you do as the honor of joining the first dance?" Her smile was all teeth, predatory and cold. Maria's heart dropped. She glanced down at Daniel, his face pale and uncertain. She knew what Victoria was doing. She was setting them up to fail, to embarrass themselves in front of everyone, but what choice did she have? Taking a deep breath, she nodded, forcing a smile. Of course, Ms. Victoria, we'd be happy to. The words felt like shards of glass in her throat. But she kept her voice steady, refusing to let Victoria see her fear. Holding Daniel's hand tightly, she led him to the dance floor. The music began to play, a soft, lilting waltz that seemed to mock the tension thrumming through Maria's veins. They started to move, awkwardly at first, their steps hesitant and uncoordinated. Daniel's hand trembled in hers, his eyes wide with anxiety. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, squeezing his hand gently. "Just follow me, we're going to be fine." Slowly, as the music swelled around them, they found a rhythm, their movements becoming more fluid, more natural. Maria could feel the eyes of the room on them, but she blocked it out, focusing on the warmth of Daniel's hand in hers, the steady beat of the music, and then something incredible happened. As they danced, Daniel's nervousness melted away, replaced by a shy, radiant smile. He looked up at Maria, his eyes sparkling with newfound confidence. "Mama, we're really doing it," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. Maria's heart swelled, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "Yes, we are, baby," she whispered back, her voice choked with emotion. "We really are." The room watched, silent and still, as Maria and Daniel moved across the dance floor. What had begun as a cruel joke was transforming into something beautiful, something unexpected. The guests, who had been poised to laugh and mock, found themselves captivated by the sight of mother and son, their connection palpable, their joy infectious. Maria's simple dress, Daniel's innocent smile. These were not the trappings of wealth or power, but something far more valuable: love, resilience, and the strength to face whatever life threw their way. Victoria stood on the sidelines, her expression frozen in disbelief. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had planned for humiliation, for Maria to stumble and falter, to shrink under the weight of the spotlight, but instead, the room was transfixed, the air buzzing not with mockery but with admiration. Maria was supposed to be the punchline of a cruel joke, but she was turning into the hero of the night. A flush of anger rose in Victoria's cheeks, but she forced it down, her mind racing. She needed to regain control, to turn the tide back in her favor. As the dance ended, the room erupted in applause. Maria and Daniel stood in the center of the floor, breathless and beaming, the sound washing over them like a wave. For a moment, Maria felt as if they had truly won, that they had defied the odds and shown the world who they really were. But then Victoria's voice cut through the applause, sharp and commanding. "Bravo, Maria, Daniel. That was truly wonderful." Her smile was tight, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "But I think our guests would love to hear more. Maria, I heard you have a beautiful singing voice. Would you do us the honor of performing a song?" Maria's heart stopped. She hadn't sung in years, not since her husband passed away, not since life had become a relentless struggle to survive. The thought of singing in front of all these people, in front of Victoria, was terrifying. She looked at Daniel, his face glowing with pride, his eyes shining with hope. How could she refuse him, after everything they had faced tonight? Taking a deep breath, she nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, I'd be happy to." The microphone felt heavy in her hand, the spotlight blinding as it centered on her. Maria could feel every eye in the room on her, the weight of their expectations pressing down like a physical force. She took a deep breath, her heart hammering in her chest. This was it, the moment Victoria had been waiting for, the moment she expected Maria to fail. But Maria wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. She wasn't going to let Victoria win. Closing her eyes, she took another deep breath and began to sing. The first notes were soft, tentative, but as the melody unfolded, Maria's voice grew stronger, filling the room with a rich, soulful sound that seemed to resonate with every person present. The song was a lullaby she used to sing to Daniel, a melody filled with love and hope, a promise of better days to come. As she sang, she thought of all the struggles they had faced, the sacrifices she had made to give her son a chance at a better life. She sang for him, for herself, for every dream she had ever dared to hold onto. The room was silent, the guests spellbound. Victoria stood at the edge of the crowd, her face pale, her hands clenched at her sides. This wasn't what she had planned. She had wanted to see Maria falter, to watch her crumble under the pressure, but instead, she was witnessing something extraordinary. Maria, standing tall and strong, her voice rising and falling like the tide, sweeping everyone up in its beauty and emotion. It was as if the entire evening had shifted, the energy in the room changing from one of superiority and judgment to one of awe and admiration. When the final notes faded into silence, there was a moment where time seemed to hang suspended, the room holding its breath, and then, the applause came, a thunderous, overwhelming sound that filled the penthouse, echoing off the crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. Maria stood in the spotlight, tears streaming down her face, Daniel at her side, his small hand clutching hers. For a heartbeat, everything else faded away, the wealth, the power, the cruel games, all that mattered was this moment, this victory, this proof that they were more than the roles others tried to force upon them. Victoria felt a surge of something unfamiliar, fear, resentment, maybe even jealousy. She had been so sure of her control, her ability to manipulate and dominate, but now, watching Maria bask in the applause, surrounded by people who moments before had been ready to mock her, she felt that control slipping through her fingers like sand. She had invited Maria and Daniel to be the evening's entertainment, to showcase the gap between their worlds, but instead, they had become the stars of the night, turning her carefully crafted spectacle into a testament of resilience and grace. As the applause echoed through the room, Maria felt a wave of emotions wash over her: relief, disbelief, and a strange, exhilarating sense of triumph. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was not just a housekeeper. Not just someone living in the shadows of others' lives. Tonight, she had found her voice, both literally and figuratively, and she had shown everyone, including herself, that she was capable of so much more. She looked down at Daniel, his face glowing with pride, and knew that whatever came next, this moment would be theirs forever. But as the applause slowly died down, Maria could feel the atmosphere shift. The guests, though impressed, were beginning to return to their usual conversations, their interest waning as the next spectacle of the night beckoned. Victoria, ever the master of social dynamics, took control once more, her voice ringing out over the crowd. "Thank you, Maria, that was truly beautiful, but let's not keep everyone waiting, there's so much more planned for tonight." She clapped her hands, and the orchestra struck up a lively tune, signaling the transition to the next phase of the evening. Maria felt a pang of disappointment as the attention turned away from them. She had known this moment wouldn't last, that they were just a brief curiosity in a world that thrived on novelty, but still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had accomplished something important. Holding Daniel's hand, she led him off the stage, her heart still racing with the adrenaline of the performance. They had survived Victoria's test, but she couldn't help wondering what more lay ahead. As the party continued, Maria found a quiet corner near the balcony, away from the crowd's scrutinizing eyes. She needed a moment to collect herself, to calm the storm of emotions swirling within her. Daniel, still buzzing with excitement, chatted animatedly about the party, his worries forgotten in the thrill of the night. Maria listened, nodding and smiling, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were still part of some cruel game Victoria was playing. It was then that she noticed him, a man standing a few feet away, his gaze fixed on her. He was tall, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his expression thoughtful. Maria felt a flicker of unease. Had she done something wrong? Was he going to ask them to leave? But instead, he took a step forward, his smile gentle and genuine. "Maria, right?" he asked, his voice low and warm. "I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed your performance. It was remarkable." Maria blinked, taken aback. Compliments were rare in her life, especially from strangers at events like this. "Thank you," she replied softly, still wary. "I didn't really plan to sing tonight, it just happened." The man nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Well, it was wonderful. You have a real talent, you should be proud." He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "I'm John, by the way. I work with Ms. Victoria sometimes." Maria's heart sank at the mention of Victoria. Was this man here to deliver some new insult or command from her employer? But there was no malice in John's gaze, only a genuine curiosity. "It must be quite something, working for someone like her," he said, his tone carefully neutral. Maria forced a smile, unsure of what to say. "It has its moments," she murmured, glancing away. She didn't want to speak ill of Victoria, not here, not now, but she also didn't want to pretend everything was perfect. John seemed to sense her discomfort and quickly changed the subject. "I know tonight must feel overwhelming, but you really held your own out there. It's not easy, doing what you did." He glanced at Daniel, who was watching them with open curiosity. "And you, young man? You were amazing too. You must be very proud of your mom." Daniel beamed, nodding eagerly. "She's the best singer in the world," he declared, his voice brimming with innocence and pride. Maria laughed softly, the sound easing some of the tension in her chest. "Thank you," she said again, more sincerely this time. "It means a lot, really. I just want to do right by him." John nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You're doing more than right, Maria, you're showing him what real courage looks like." He hesitated, then continued, his voice lower. "Listen, if you ever need anything, a recommendation, help with something, let me know. I have connections." and I'd be happy to support you in any way I can. Maria felt a rush of gratitude, but also a twinge of something else, pride. She had come this far on her own, and while she appreciated John's offer, she didn't want to rely on anyone else to make her dreams come true. Thank you, John, she said softly, but I need to do this on my own. For Daniel and me, it's important that I build this myself, you know? John nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. I understand, and I respect that, but if you ever change your mind, the offer stands. Meanwhile, across the room, Victoria watched the exchange with narrowed eyes. She had seen John approach Maria, had watched them talk, and it irked her. John was supposed to be on her side, supposed to be part of her world. What was he doing, cozying up to Maria like that? Her mind raced, a dark anger bubbling beneath her polished exterior. She needed to regain control, to remind everyone, including John, of her place and theirs. With a calculated smile, she made her way over to where Maria and Daniel stood, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Maria, she called out, her voice carrying over the din of the party. I've been looking for you. There's someone very special I'd like you to meet. Her eyes glittered with a predatory light, and Maria felt a chill run down her spine. She could sense the trap, but there was no way to avoid it now. With a steadying breath, she nodded. Of course, Ms. Victoria. Victoria led them through the crowd, the guests parting before her like the Red Sea. She stopped in front of an elderly couple, their faces lined with years and privilege. Maria, I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. Hayward. They're very dear friends of mine. She turned to the couple, her smile gleaming. This is Maria. She's been with me for quite some time, taking care of everything at the penthouse. And this is her son, Daniel. The couple regarded Maria and Daniel with polite, disinterested smiles, their eyes flicking over them as if they were examining a piece of furniture. How charming, Mrs. Hayward murmured, her tone cool. It's always so nice to see people of modest means having a chance to experience something special. Her words, though framed as a compliment, were sharp, their edge unmistakable. Maria felt the sting but kept her expression neutral, unwilling to give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. As the conversation continued, Victoria took every opportunity to highlight the differences between Maria's world and theirs, her words laced with condescension. She spoke of lavish vacations, exclusive clubs, and investments that Maria could never dream of affording, each sentence a reminder of the chasm that separated them. Daniel, sensing the tension, pressed closer to his mother, his small hand gripping hers tightly. Maria squeezed back, her heart aching for him. This wasn't what she wanted him to see, to feel, and then, without warning, Daniel spoke up, his voice clear and innocent. Mama sings to me every night, he said, his eyes bright. She says one day, we're going to have a big house, just like this one, and I'll have my own room and everything. His words hung in the air, a stark, jarring contrast to the conversation around them. The Haywards exchanged amused glances, their smiles patronizing. Well, isn't that sweet, Mr. Hayward drawled, but you know, young man, dreams like that don't always come true. Maria felt a surge of anger, hot and fierce. She opened her mouth to say something, to defend her son, but Victoria beat her to it. Oh, let's not discourage him, dear, she said with a laugh. After all, everyone needs a little hope, don't they? The room rippled with quiet laughter, and Maria's vision blurred with tears. She wanted to leave, to take Daniel and run far away from this place, from these people who saw them as nothing more than entertainment. But before she could move, John stepped forward, his expression stern. Actually, Mr. Hayward, I think Maria and Daniel have shown us all something very important tonight, he said, his voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. It's not about where you come from or what you have, it's about courage and heart, and I, for one, think they have more of both than most people in this room. The room fell silent, the tension crackling like electricity. Victoria's smile faltered, her eyes flashing with anger, but John didn't back down. He turned to Maria, his gaze steady and encouraging. You've done an incredible job tonight, Maria, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He glanced at Daniel, his smile softening. And you, young man, keep dreaming big. I believe in you. Maria's heart swelled, the warmth of his words banishing the cold sting of the Haywards' mockery. For the first time that night, she felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone in this. She looked at John, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Maria could still feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. It had been a night unlike any other. A night that had started with dread and uncertainty and ended with a triumph she had never dared to dream of. But now, as she stood near the grand staircase of the penthouse, watching the stream of elegantly dressed people saying their goodbyes. She knew that this victory was fleeting. The reality of her life was waiting just outside these gilded walls. Victoria, however, was far from finished. Despite the warm goodbyes she exchanged with her guests, there was a storm brewing beneath her composed exterior. Her eyes darted towards Maria, still standing quietly with Daniel by her side, and the sight ignited a fresh wave of anger. This was supposed to be her night, her moment to shine, and yet, the memory of the evening was now tied to Maria's unexpected display of courage and grace. She couldn't stand it. As the last of the guests exited, Victoria approached Maria, her smile cool and calculated. "Maria, I wanted to have a word with you before you leave," she said, her tone deceptively pleasant. Maria's heart sank. She had hoped to slip out quietly, without any more confrontations, but it seemed Victoria had other plans. She glanced down at Daniel, who looked up at her with sleepy eyes, then nodded. "Of course, Ms. Victoria, just let me take Daniel to the car. He's exhausted." Victoria's gaze softened slightly as she looked at Daniel. "I understand, the poor thing has had quite a night." She paused, then added with a faint, almost imperceptible edge, "But don't go far. I'll wait for you in the study." Maria nodded again, feeling a tight knot of anxiety form in her chest. She led Daniel out to the car, helped him into the back seat, and covered him with a blanket she kept there for chilly evenings. "Stay here, okay, sweetheart? I'll be right back," she whispered, brushing a kiss on his forehead. He nodded sleepily, already half asleep, and Maria took a deep breath before heading back inside. Victoria was waiting in the study, standing by the large windows that overlooked the glittering cityscape. Her back was to the door, and Maria took a moment to steady herself before speaking. "You wanted to see me, Ms. Victoria?" Victoria turned slowly, her expression inscrutable. "Yes, Maria, I did." She took a step closer, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I wanted to congratulate you on your performance tonight. You certainly surprised everyone, didn't you?" Maria felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't sure if Victoria's words were a compliment or an accusation. "I wasn't trying to, weren't you?" Victoria interrupted, her voice suddenly sharp, "because it certainly seemed like you were enjoying all the attention, you and your son, basking in the spotlight. It was almost as if you'd planned it all along." Maria's mouth dropped open. "Planned it? Ms. Victoria, I would never. Don't play innocent with me." "Maria," Victoria snapped, "you think I don't know how these things work?" A sob story, a few tears, a pretty song, and suddenly everyone's on your side. She took another step forward, her eyes flashing with anger. "Do you think this changes anything? Do you think one night of applause means you're anything more than what you were when you walked in here?" Maria felt the words like a slap. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. Victoria's gaze was fierce, unyielding, and Maria felt suddenly small. As if all the strength and courage she had felt earlier in the evening had been drained away in an instant. "I've worked hard to build this life," Victoria continued, her voice low and intense. "I've fought for every inch of what I have, and I won't have it overshadowed by some Cinderella story." She turned away, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the back of a chair. "I gave you a chance tonight, Maria, and you took it, but don't forget your place." Maria took a shaky breath, her heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to shout that she wasn't trying to take anything from Victoria, that she was just trying to survive, to give her son a better life, but she knew it would be useless. Victoria was in a world of her own, a world where appearances and power were everything, and in that world, Maria was just a minor inconvenience, a stain on the otherwise perfect image Victoria had crafted. "I'm sorry, Ms. Victoria," she said quietly, forcing herself to meet Victoria's gaze. "I didn't mean to overstep." Victoria's expression softened slightly, and she nodded, as if that was all she had wanted to hear. "Good, I'm glad we understand each other." She took a deep breath, her composure returning. "You can go now, Maria, and don't worry, I won't hold tonight against you. As long as we both remember our roles, everything will be fine." Maria nodded, her stomach churning with a mix of anger and shame. She turned and walked out of the study, her steps echoing in the silent hallway. As she left the penthouse, she felt tears prickling at her eyes, but she forced them back. She couldn't cry now, not here, not where Victoria could still see her. When she reached the car, she slid into the driver's seat and sat for a moment, staring out at the city lights. Daniel was sound asleep in the back, his breathing soft and steady. Maria reached back and gently touched his cheek, her heart aching with a fierce, protective love. She had to be strong for him. She had to keep fighting, no matter what. "Everything's going to be okay, baby," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "We're going to get through this, I promise." The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet. the streets nearly deserted as the city slipped into the early hours of the morning. Maria's mind was a whirl of emotions: anger at Victoria's cruel words, pride at what she and Daniel had accomplished, fear of what the future held, but beneath it all was a steady, unyielding determination. She wasn't going to let Victoria's pettiness and jealousy break her. She had come too far, fought too hard, to give up now. The next few days passed in a blur. Maria returned to her usual routine, dropping Daniel off at school, heading to her classes at the community college, and working at the penthouse. Victoria was distant but civil, treating Maria with a cool politeness that was almost worse than her previous condescension. It was as if she had decided that Maria was no longer worth her attention, that she had been put back in her place and could be safely ignored. But Maria knew better. She could feel the tension simmering beneath the surface, the unspoken animosity that lingered in every interaction. Victoria might be pretending that everything was fine, but Maria knew that she was still angry, still resentful, and that meant she had to be careful. One evening, as Maria was finishing up her cleaning, she overheard a conversation between Victoria and one of her friends, a sharp-edged woman named Caroline. They were standing in the living room, sipping wine and laughing softly, their voices low and conspiratorial. "I can't believe she actually sang," Caroline was saying, her voice dripping with disdain. "What did she think she was doing, trying to upstage you at your own party?" Victoria's laugh was brittle. "Oh, she's just a little mouse who found her voice for a night. It won't last. People like that never do. They have their moment, and then they fade away, back into the shadows where they belong." Caroline smirked. "Well, if you want my advice, you should make sure she stays there. Can't have her getting any more ideas above her station, can we?" Victoria's smile was cold. "Don't worry, I know exactly how to handle her." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. She didn't know what Victoria was planning, but she knew it wouldn't be good. She had to be ready, had to protect herself and Daniel from whatever was coming. The next day, Maria arrived at work to find that her schedule had been changed. She was no longer assigned to the penthouse. Instead, she was being sent to one of Victoria's other properties, a large house in a quieter part of the city. The message was clear. Victoria was trying to push her out, to make her feel isolated and unwelcome, but Maria refused to be intimidated. She went to the new location and did her job with the same dedication and care she always did. She wouldn't give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing her falter. She would keep her head down, do her work, and find a way. Through this, days turned into weeks, and Maria's life settled into a new, uneasy routine. She missed the penthouse, missed the challenge and the beauty of the place, but she knew that being away from Victoria's constant scrutiny was probably a blessing, and in the quiet of the new house, she found herself thinking more and more about her future, about what she wanted for herself and for Daniel. One evening, after Daniel had gone to bed, Maria sat down at the small table in their kitchen and opened her notebook. She had been taking classes in business and finance, learning about budgeting, marketing, and management. It was hard, juggling work, school, and motherhood, but she was determined. She wanted to start her own business, a small cleaning company that would provide good jobs and fair wages for people like her, people who were struggling to make ends meet. She sketched out a rough plan, listing the things she would need: supplies, a vehicle, a small office space. It seemed overwhelming, almost impossible, but as she looked at the page, she felt a flicker of hope. This was something she could build, something that would be hers, a future she could create for herself and for Daniel. The next morning, Maria woke up early, her mind buzzing with ideas. She got Daniel ready for school, dropped him off, and then went to her classes, her thoughts racing. She needed to talk to someone, to get advice from someone who knew what they were doing. That evening, she hesitated outside her classroom, her heart pounding. She had seen John a few times since the party, but they had only exchanged brief pleasantries. He had been friendly, supportive, but Maria hadn't been sure if she should take him up on his offer of help. But now, with her dreams starting to take shape, she felt a surge of determination. She couldn't do this alone. She took a deep breath and approached him as he was leaving the building. "John, do you have a moment?" she asked, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. He turned, his expression lighting up with a smile. "Maria, of course. What's on your mind?" Maria hesitated for a moment, then plunged ahead. I've been thinking about starting my own business, a cleaning company, and I was wondering if you could give me some advice, maybe point me in the right direction." John's smile widened, and he nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely, Maria, I'd be happy to help. Why don't we grab a coffee and talk about it?" They found a quiet cafe nearby and sat down, the air filled with the rich scent of freshly brewed coffee. Maria pulled out her notebook, showing him her plans, her ideas. John listened attentively, asking questions, offering suggestions. He was impressed by her determination, her clarity of vision. You've really thought this through, Maria, he said, his tone admiring. I think you could make this work. Maria felt a surge of pride, but also a hint of doubt. Do you really think so? I mean, it's such a big step, and I don't have much money, or experience. Maria, you have more experience than you realize, John interrupted gently. You've been running households, managing people, balancing budgets. Those are all skills that will serve you well in this, and as for money, well, that's where I can help. I can introduce you to some people, potential investors, who might be interested in supporting you. Maria blinked, stunned. Investors. For me? John nodded, his expression serious. Yes, for you. You have a great idea, Maria, and people are always looking to invest in good ideas, especially when they're backed by someone as passionate and capable as you. Maria felt tears prickling at her eyes. She had never imagined that someone like John would believe in her, would see her as more than just a housekeeper, more than just a struggling single mother. Thank you, John. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, John said softly. Just keep believing in yourself. I'll set up some meetings for you, and we'll take it one step at a time. Okay? Maria nodded, her heart swelling with hope and gratitude. For the first time in a long time, she felt like her dreams were within reach, like she could actually build something lasting and meaningful for herself and for Daniel. As they left the cafe, Maria felt a sense of excitement bubbling inside her. This was just the beginning, but it felt like the start of something incredible. She had a long road ahead, but she wasn't alone anymore. She had allies, people who believed in her, and most importantly, she believed in herself. Over the next few weeks, John helped Maria refine her business plan, introduced her to potential investors, and guided her through the process of setting up her company. It was a whirlwind of meetings, paperwork, and late nights, but Maria was determined. She worked tirelessly, pouring all her energy and passion into building her dream. Victoria, meanwhile, watched from a distance, her feelings a tangled mix of curiosity, resentment, and something she couldn't quite name. She had tried to push Maria away, to remind her of her place, but it seemed to have backfired. Instead of retreating, Maria had grown stronger, more confident. It infuriated Victoria, but it also fascinated her. One evening, as she sat alone in her penthouse, sipping a glass of wine and staring out at the city lights, Victoria felt a strange pang of loneliness. She had everything she had ever wanted: wealth, power, success, but it all felt hollow, empty. She thought of Maria, of the fire in her eyes, the determination in her voice. What was it like to have that kind of passion, that kind of purpose? Victoria set her glass down with a sigh. She had spent so long building her empire, protecting her image, that she had lost sight of what really mattered. Maybe it was time for a change. Maybe it was time to find something more. The next day, Victoria did something she had never done before. She called Maria and asked if they could meet for lunch. Maria was surprised but agreed, curious to see what Victoria wanted. They met at a quiet restaurant downtown, the atmosphere tense and uncertain. Victoria was nervous, though she would never admit it, and Maria was wary, unsure of what to expect. Thank you for meeting me, Maria, Victoria said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I realized that I owe you an apology. Maria blinked, taken aback. An apology? Yes, Victoria said, her gaze sincere. I've treated you unfairly, and I'm sorry. I was angry and jealous, and I took it out on you. That wasn't right. Maria felt a mix of emotions, relief, disbelief, and a cautious hope. She had never expected to hear Victoria apologize, to see her admit she was wrong. Thank you, Ms. Victoria. I appreciate that. Please, call me Victoria, she said with a small smile. I'd like us to be, well, not friends, maybe, but allies. I see now that you're not my enemy, Maria. You're just trying to make a better life for yourself and your son, and I respect that. Maria nodded slowly, still processing Victoria's words. I'd like that too, Victoria. They talked for a while longer, the conversation tentative but genuine. Victoria asked about Maria's business, about her plans, and Maria found herself sharing more than she had expected. By the end of the lunch, there was a new understanding between them, a fragile but hopeful truce. As Maria walked back to her car, she felt a strange sense of peace. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she was on solid ground, like she was in control of her own destiny. Over the next few months, Maria's business began to grow. She hired a small team, secured her first few clients, and started building a reputation for quality and reliability. It was hard work, but it was rewarding, and every day she felt more confident, more capable. Victoria, true to her word, stayed out of Maria's way but kept a watchful eye on her progress. She found herself rooting for Maria, admiring her strength and resilience, and in her own life, she started making changes too, focusing more on her charitable work, looking for ways to give back to the community. One evening, as Maria was finishing up some paperwork in her small office, she received an unexpected visitor. Victoria walked in, looking a little nervous but determined. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her voice hesitant. Maria smiled, surprised but pleased to see her. "Not at all. What brings you here?" Victoria took a deep breath, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped package. "I wanted to give you something. It's a small gesture, but I hope you'll accept it." Curious, Maria took the package and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a beautiful, leather-bound notebook, its pages blank and inviting. Maria looked up, touched and a little puzzled. "Victoria, this is lovely, but I thought you could use it to keep track of your ideas, your plans," Victoria said quickly, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I know it's not much, but I wanted you to know that I believe in what you're doing, and I'm here to support you." Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. It was such a simple gift, but it meant so much. "Thank you, Victoria. This means a lot to me." Victoria smiled, looking a little relieved. "I'm glad, and if you ever need anything at all, just let me know." "Okay," Maria nodded, her heart full. "I will. Thank you." As Victoria left, Maria sat down at her desk and opened the notebook. She stared at the blank pages for a moment, then picked up a pen and began to write. She wrote about her dreams, her goals, the things she wanted to achieve. She wrote about the struggles she had faced, the obstacles she had overcome, and the people who had helped her along the way. And as she wrote, she felt a deep sense of peace, a certainty that she was on the right path. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready for whatever came next. Months passed, and Maria's business continued to grow. She expanded her team, took on more clients, and even opened a second office. It was a whirlwind of work and challenges, but Maria loved every minute of it. She was building something real, something that mattered, and it filled her with a sense of purpose she had never known before. Daniel, too, was thriving. He was doing well in school, making friends, and growing more confident every day. He was proud of his mother, proud of what she had accomplished, and he often talked about helping her with the business when he got older. One evening, as they were sitting together on the couch, watching a movie, Daniel turned to her with a serious expression. "Mama, do you think we'll ever have that big house, like we talked about?" Maria smiled, her heart aching with love and hope. "Maybe, sweetheart, but you know what? I'm happy right here, with you. This is our home, and as long as we're together, that's all that matters." Daniel nodded, satisfied with her answer. "I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby," Maria whispered, pulling him close. With each passing day, Maria's business flourished beyond her wildest dreams. The small cleaning company she had envisioned was now a thriving enterprise, employing dozens of people who, like her, were striving to build better lives for themselves and their families. The company's reputation for quality and integrity spread, and soon, Maria was receiving offers to expand into new cities. It was overwhelming, but exhilarating. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was truly in control of her destiny. Daniel, now a little older, watched his mother's success with pride and admiration. He often helped out in the office after school, organizing paperwork or chatting with the employees, who treated him like family. He was no longer the shy, uncertain boy who had clung to her side at Victoria's party. He was confident, curious, and full of dreams of his own. Maria knew that whatever he chose to do in life, he would do it with the same courage and determination that had brought them through the toughest times. One afternoon, Maria received a phone call that would change everything. It was from a prestigious business magazine that wanted to feature her in a story about women entrepreneurs who had built successful businesses from the ground up. Maria was stunned to think that her story, her struggles and triumphs, were something worth celebrating on such a public platform seemed almost surreal. The day of the interview arrived, and Maria felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She sat in her small, but cozy office, her hands clasped together on the desk. The interviewer, a warm and professional woman named Susan, smiled as she set up her recorder. "Maria, your story is incredible. From where you started to where you are now, it's truly inspiring. What do you think has been the key to your success?" Maria took a deep breath, thinking about the long, winding road that had brought her here. "I think it's about resilience and belief in yourself. There were so many times I wanted to give up. So many times it seemed like everything was against me, but I kept going because I had to, for my son, for myself, and I think that's what makes the difference. Never giving up, no matter how hard it gets." Susan nodded, her eyes warm with understanding. "And what would you say to other women out there who might be facing similar challenges?" Maria's gaze softened as she thought of all the women she had met over the years, women who were fighting battles of their own, who were struggling to make ends meet, to provide for their families, to build something better. I would tell them that they're stronger than they know, that they can do it. It's not easy, and it's okay to be scared, to feel lost, but they have to believe in themselves, even when no one else does, because they're worth it, and they can create amazing things if they just keep going. The interview ended on a high note, and as Susan left, she turned back to Maria with a smile. Thank you, Maria. I think your story is going to inspire a lot of people. Maria watched her go, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. She had come so far, but she knew this was just the beginning. There were still so many dreams to chase, so many goals to achieve. A few weeks later, the magazine article was published. The response was overwhelming. Maria received countless messages of support and admiration, not just from friends and family, but from strangers who had read her story and felt moved by her journey. She was invited to speak at conferences, to share her experiences with other aspiring entrepreneurs. It was both thrilling and humbling to realize that her voice, once so small and unsure, now had the power to inspire and uplift others. Victoria, who had been watching Maria's success from afar, couldn't help but feel a pang of something she hadn't expected, pride. She had seen Maria's struggle, had tried to push her down, and yet, Maria had risen higher than she could have imagined. It was humbling, and it made Victoria reflect on her own life, on the choices she had made, the things she had valued. For the first time, she found herself questioning what it all meant. One evening, Victoria decided to reach out. She called Maria, her voice hesitant but sincere. Maria, I just read the article. I wanted to say, congratulations, you've done something amazing. Maria was surprised but touched by the call. Thank you, Victoria, that means a lot. Victoria hesitated, then took a deep breath. I was wondering if you'd like to get coffee sometime? I'd love to catch up, hear more about how things are going. Maria smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. I'd like that, Victoria, I'd like that a lot. They met a few days later at a small cafe downtown. It was a tentative reunion, marked by awkward pauses and cautious smiles, but as they talked, the tension melted away. They shared stories, laughed about old memories, and slowly, a new kind of friendship began to form. A friendship built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of the struggles they had both faced. As they stood to leave, Victoria reached out and took Maria's hand. I'm proud of you, Maria. I know I didn't always show it, but I am. You've shown me what real strength looks like. Maria felt tears prickling at her eyes. Thank you, Victoria, that means more than you know. They hugged, a brief but heartfelt embrace that spoke of forgiveness, of new beginnings. Back at home that night, Maria sat down at her desk and opened the leather-bound notebook Victoria had given her. She wrote about the day, about the surprising, tentative friendship that was blossoming between her and Victoria, about her hopes for the future, and as she wrote, she felt a sense of peace, a certainty that she was on the right path. Months turned into years, and Maria's business continued to grow. She expanded into new cities, opened several offices, and her company became a respected name in the industry. She continued to hire people who needed a second chance, who were looking to build something better for themselves, and every day, she felt grateful for the journey that had brought her here, for the people who had believed in her, and for the strength she had found within herself. Daniel, now a young man, decided to follow in his mother's footsteps. He went to college, studied business, and joined the family company, bringing with him a fresh perspective and new ideas. Maria watched him with pride, knowing that he was building on the foundation she had laid, taking their dream even further than she had imagined. One evening, as they sat together in the office, Daniel turned to her with a smile. Mama, I've been thinking, maybe it's time to buy that big house you always talked about. Maria laughed, her heart swelling with love and pride. Maybe it is, sweetheart, but wherever we go, as long as we're together, that's home. They did buy the house, a beautiful, sprawling place with enough space for Daniel to have his own studio and for Maria to finally have the garden she had always dreamed of. It was a symbol of everything they had achieved, of the strength and resilience that had carried them through the darkest times. And as Maria stood on the porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, she felt a deep, abiding sense of peace. She had come so far, had faced so many challenges, but she had never given up. She had found her voice, her strength, and she had built a life that was more beautiful and meaningful than she had ever dared to hope. To anyone watching her story unfold, Maria's journey was a testament to the power of resilience, of believing in yourself, even when the odds are stacked against you. She had shown that with courage, determination, and a little bit of help along the way, it was possible to turn even the most impossible dreams into reality. So, as the sun dipped Below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Maria closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, for the journey, for the struggles, for the victories, and for the endless possibilities that still lay ahead, and in that moment, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Conclusion. Maria's story reminds us that no matter where we start, no matter the obstacles we face, we all have the power to change our lives, to create something beautiful out of even the most difficult circumstances. It's about finding your voice, believing in your dreams, and never giving up, no matter how tough the journey gets. So, if you've been inspired by Maria's journey, if you feel that spark of hope, that determination to make a change in your own life, take that first step, believe in yourself, surround yourself with people who lift you up, and keep pushing forward. Because you have the strength, the courage, and the power to create your own story, to make your own dreams come true. And if you want to hear more stories like Maria's, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, so you never miss an update. Let's continue to inspire each other, to lift each other up, and to make the world a better place, one story at a time. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing in the power of resilience and hope. We'll see you in the next story.